Hey guys, thank you for joining us for Teen Talk. We are in our ID series where we've been discussing becoming who God has created us to be. Today we are going to be talking about the last principle of the characteristics, what it means to flee and pursue righteousness. Okay, so we're talking about this principle. We actually covered this principle back in our Transform series one day.
Relationships.
Yeah, we were talking about relationships and how far is too far. So if you missed that, you can always go back and watch that. But we covered this really in detail there, but also from a different angle than we're going to cover today as well.
Yeah.
But the principle is found in 2 Timothy 2:22. And just like we did a few weeks ago, we're actually going to cover 2 Timothy every single day this week. You know, like we're going to read it every single day this week, you know, because that's the principal idea. We need to understand this because it's something that is always true, no matter how strong in your faith you are.
Yeah, it's a good foundation to put before everything that you read, especially as we read through we've read through these examples and, of different people that have fleed or fleed.
Fleed. Yeah, fleed.
No flew or fleed. But fleed or pursued, you know, that kind of thing. Didn't flee.
Yeah, and so when we're talking about this principle, what the principle that we see is it's flee and pursue. And so to describe that, let's read it from 2 Timothy 2:22. And obviously from today's reading, we're reading like the whole section, whole passage. But the verse that stands out is 2 Timothy 2:22 says, "Now flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, those who call on the Lord from a pure heart." And so what you see here is this idea that we flee first, which means we turn and we run from, it says youthful lusts. We can like just throw in there the idea of sin, the things that we desire in our flesh.
It could be anything.
Yeah, which we've seen from 1 John is lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. You know, and so we flee those things, which means we turn 180 degrees and we run. We get up and we run from it.
Right.
But a lot of times that's where we stop as believers. We flee the sin. We say, okay, that's wrong. I shouldn't do it. I'm not going to do it. But we never replace it. You know?
Yeah, we never replace it with righteousness.
Yeah.
Pursuing righteousness.
Yeah, so I like this coffee, right? If you just take this coffee away from me, I'm going to still want coffee. I'm just going to be sitting here thinking, man, I wish I had my coffee.
Right.
Just like your Skittles that are still over there in the corner.
So the nice thing to do would be to take this coffee and then replace it with Kirkland water.
No, Ice Mountain. But yeah, no, it's that idea of, okay, this is sinful. I'm not going to do it. But if you don't fill that, replace that void in your heart with something, then the laziness and the boredom and the I'm not doing anything is just going to draw you back to the same place.
And the sin's going to creep right back in.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be you might be worse than you were before.
Right. And so what we see is, you know, he says flee, but then he says pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace. You know, righteousness, faith, love, and peace. And so those are the things that, like, when we flee sin, we need to look at our life and replace it with.
Right.
You know, and so this week in the reading plan, we have that principle every day that we're going to read. So you're going to come back to this verse over and over again. One, because it's just a good thing to memorize.
Yeah.
You know, and two, it's really the principal passage. And then we're going to have other readings that demonstrate what it looks like to flee or not to flee.
Yeah, different people that have, you know, they did flee from it or they didn't flee or they did pursue righteousness. There's a lot of different, God has given us a lot of different examples that are applicable to a lot of our lives that we can kind of read through and filter through with this.
Right. But one of the things that we actually see a lot throughout Scripture, and we see a lot of, I mean, I've done it myself, I don't know if you've done it, is sometimes we see something as sin and we even try and flee it, but we continue to hold it over our own heads. Like we continue to have regret and remorse for the sin that we did in the past, forgetting that Christ has forgiven it.
You're constantly putting yourself back on, like, inside, like, the court box.
Right.
And, you know, you're putting your sentence back on yourself.
Right.
Of that thing that you've done wrong.
Yeah.
And I think so often, like, a lot of us are guilty of this. This is a struggle for a lot of us.
Yeah, for sure.
I know it's a struggle for me.
Yeah.
And it just keeps creeping, but it's not. Like, we're going to learn that God has, like, wiped that. Like, that's gone. Like, you flee away from it, it's gone.
Right. So in the context of where we're at, all month we've been talking about the characteristics of God. We talked about who God is, and then who a Christ follower is, and then what a flesh follower is, to give ourselves a picture. Then we did the gauge last week.
Yeah.
You know, to say, okay, put ourselves on a scale and say, okay, this is where I am. I'm a 50% Christian, or I'm a full Christian, or I'm a 10% Christian. You know, whatever it is. Like, we're looking, okay, this is where we're at, so now we know where we need to go. We come to this place, though, like, where we understand, like, our downfalls and our sin and all that kind of stuff, and we know that we need to flee it, and we know that we need to pursue it, but then we constantly we take those gauges and we, like, let them weigh us down and say, like, I'm just not good enough. God can't use me.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I definitely know. It happens with all different aspects.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of that lately.
Right.
Like, it definitely brings on, and you're like, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this, and you're allowing that to, like, just own you. And
Right. So anyways, with that, that's some of the reading this week, is really just looking at how Christ views your sin and the fact that he's forgiven it. And so he, you know, going back to what a Christ follower is and the way God views us, and we're going to get into his purposes and stuff for our life towards the end of this month, and kind of defining in our own mind what the will of God is for our life. But we have to, first of all, just straight up forgive ourselves. Like, realize it's been forgiven, and begin to pursue righteousness even when we feel unworthy because of our past. Like, now, if we continue to sin,
well, then you end up in that cycle of sin, and maybe a Romans 1 situation ends up happening.
But if you have been forgiven and you have repented, walk away and stop.
Yeah, it's over.
You know, stop blaming. But we'll talk more about that, and really what that means in our lives and how we've experienced that in our lives on Friday. So I hope that you will join us, and we will see you then as we continue this conversation on what we learned on Friday.